Hello everyone, this is Jamie here. Welcome to the night version of the interior penthouse apartment. In this course, I'll be taking you through the process of turning a daylight interior apartment into a night one. Some of the lights have already been created from the previous daylight version, and some new ones will be created in this course to help capture typical interior apartment scene at night. So without further ado, before we start rendering, let's reduce some of the high resolution values previously entered to render the interior daylight scene. First, open the Render Setup dialog by clicking on this button and delete the previously created sunlight object. Back in the Render Setup dialog, in the Commons tab, let's reduce the render output size to 1000 pixels by 578 pixels. Note that because the image aspect is locked, the width and height values are relative to one another. In the V-Ray tab, under the frame buffer parameters, uncheck the V-Ray raw image file function. This will prevent the V-Ray from saving or overriding existing V-Ray raw image files while we test render. Also, uncheck the separate render channels. Most of these functions have already been discussed in detail in the previous daylight interior course. Uncheck the resumable rendering. Let's reduce the uniform probabilistic value to 8 for test renders. Under the bucket image sampler parameters, because we'll be carrying out quick and draft renders, let's decrease the minimum subdivision value to about 1 and the max subdivisions to 4, which is extremely low. In the noise threshold, let's increase it to 0.01 to speed up the rendering times. Under the color mapping, let's keep the mode as color mapping only, because the gamma value of 2.2 has already been applied in the 3ds Max preferences. In the GI tab, under the ambient occlusion section, let's reduce the subdivision value to about 8 to speed up the ambient occlusion computation. In the radius map parameters, to speed up the pre-rendering calculation process and have draft results, let's change the current preset to very low. In the light cache parameters, for quick and draft light cache results, let's reduce the subdivision value to about 600. Let's carry out a quick test render to see what the scene is looking like without the sunlight object. As you can see, the overall render still looks like a daylight render even with the sunlight deleted. The first step is to change the textures of the building outside to a night one. Let's start by clicking on the wireframe mode and choosing the shaded viewport option from the drop-down list. Next, we're going to select the building outside object and isolate it by clicking on the Isolate button. Open the Material Editor dialog by clicking M on your keyboard or by clicking on this button on the main toolbar. Select the building outside material slot. In the Basic Parameters rollout, click on its diffuse toggle and then on its bitmap toggle. Choose and open the bitmap under the name of High-Rise Night 0058 _1 _seamless _L. All these high-resolution textures came from textures.com website, formerly known as cgtextures.com. As you can see in the shaded viewport, the texture is now updated and is more consistent with the night scene. Next, let's open the modifier panel and change some of the length, width, tiling values to match the window sizes of the previous one. Change the length, width and height value to about 3000. While the UVW map is still selected, use the Move tool to adjust the texture in the viewport. Once satisfied, exit the Modify panel and the Isolation mode. Let's close and minimize some of these open dialogues. Before we go any further, let's bring in a photo reference to be used as a guide for the overall look and feel of the render. Click on the rendering toolbar and choose the View Image File option from the drop-down list. In the View File dialog, choose this night photo reference. As you can see, This photo reference encapsulates everything a striking interior night photo reference should look like. Everything that's outside has a tinge of blue spilling through the glass windows, which is contrasted by the warm lights inside the apartment. The sheer contrast of these two powerful colors make most night scenes extremely appealing. The following step is to emulate this look and feel in the render. Let's minimize some of these dialog boxes and expand the viewport. Select the V-Ray light window and open the Modify panel. Click on its color swatch to open the color selector dialog. Enable the sample screen color and pick the blue tinge depicted in the photo reference. We can adjust it further in the color selector dialog. Next, let's close the control panel and create a V-Ray dome light. To do so, click on the light button and choose the V-Ray option from the list. Next, click on the V-Ray light button. In the top viewport, click and drag to create the V-Ray light object. Open the Modify panel. In the General group, click on the light type and choose the dome light from the list. Next, click on its color swatch and change it to a similar blue tone as the window light. Select the window light in the scene. In the Modify color swatch, right-click and copy. Select the dome light and paste it in its color swatch. Under the options rollout, let's make the dome light invisible to the camera by enabling the invisible function. Also, uncheck the effect reflections and the effect specular option. These two functions have been unchecked because dome light often creates undesired results on reflections and the specular of other objects in the scene. Let's do a quick test render to check these latest changes. The render is looking much better, but still needs a few more tweaks. Let's cancel the render first. While the dome light is still selected, let's change its name to _dome. Open the Modify panel, click on its color swatch and change it into a darker tone of blue. Copy this color, select the window light and paste in its color swatch. Let's do another test render to check the changes. The overall render is looking much better now. However, the texture of the building outside still remains unchanged. Let's cancel the render and rectify this error. Click on the diffuse toggle to check the texture. The diffuse texture looks correct here. Click on the Go to Parent button to go back to the basic parameters. Next, let's copy the diffuse texture by right-clicking on the diffuse toggle and choosing to copy it from the list. Scroll down to the self-illumination group, right-click on its toggle and choose to clear the current texture. Once cleared, right-click again and choose to paste instance the previously copied texture from the diffuse toggle. As you can see, the self-illumination image is now consistent with the diffuse texture. The following step is to use this photo reference to place a strip light washing down the ceiling gap. This tutorial is a small segment of a course I've recently created for my Patreon supporters and my blog. In this course, users are taken through the full process of converting a daylight interior scene into a night one using 3ds Max, V-Ray and Photoshop. To follow this course, you need the previous interior daylight classes. You can access and download the 3D projects and videos from my Patreon page or my blog. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please like and share it, and I hope to see you on my next one.